มือถือการถ่ายภาพในขณะที่ผู้บรรยายก็งดเว้นนะคะสำหรับท่านที่ใช้หูฟังก็กรุณาปรับระดับเสียงให้อยู่ในระดับที่เหมาะสมไม่รบกวนผู้ชมข้างเคียงค่ะสำหรับท่านที่ต้องการแต้มพวต.เมื่อกรอกข้อมูลเสร็จแล้วกรุณาหย่อนที่กล่องที่ประตูทางออกเมื่อท่านออกจากห้องนี้นะคะแล้วก็สำหรับท่านที่นำรถมาสามารถประทับตาปั๊มรถได้ที่เคาน์เตอร์ด้านหน้าค่ะ Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to our last session of ASA International Forum 2014. Before I introduce our last speaker of today, please allow me to remind you to turn off your mobile phone. For those of you who use translating headset, please control the volume to an appropriate level, not to disturb others next to you. For those of you who need CPD scores, please fill in the form and put it in the box provided at the exit before you leave the room. Parking receipt can also be stamped in front of the hall. Now it's time to begin the last session of ASA Forum 2014. Our final speaker is Andreas, the principal of TYIN Tour Architects, an architecture practice based in Trondheim, Norway, which he launched and co-founded with Gjertsen. Established in 2008, TYIN is known for its philosophy of an architecture that follows necessity, responsive to real and fundamental challenges. It has complete projects in poor and underdeveloped areas to improve community lives in several countries, including Thailand, Burma, Haiti, and Uganda. Local labor and locally available materials and resources are important ingredients of the design and building processes. Through mutual exchange of knowledge and skills, they are able to create functional, affordable, and aesthetically equipped solutions with social and ecological sustainability potential. The framework also provides linkage for community needs with student volunteer and funding from private and company donations. TYIN has been awarded and nominated for several international prizes, including the winner of 2012 European Prize for Architecture and 2012 Global Award for Sustainable Architecture. Gjertsen is also an assistant professor at the Department of Architectural Design, Form and Color Studies, Norwegian University of Science and Technology. Please welcome Andreas Gjertsen.
Thank you. I try to tell my students that in their presentations they should keep their names not bigger than their projects, and in this case my name was bigger than me. So I thank you for that grand introduction. I also want to thank ASA for inviting us to talk here. We started our studio based on the things we learned in Thailand. So for me to be here, finally, officially having a lecture in Thailand is really amazing. So thank you so much for inviting us. It's also interesting because usually we talk about our projects outside of Thailand to people that have no idea about how the Thai culture works and what is special about it. And in that sense, I need to educate people on how this place is to do design in. In this situation, the tables has turned, and suddenly I must only present the way I have seen the Thai culture and the Thai architecture scene through the projects we have done. So I hope you excuse me for bad pronunciation of names and also misinformation about the situation. So if anyone wants to discuss stuff afterwards, I'm here for a couple of hours, so feel free to come and talk to me and teach me new things. The reason why I haven't chosen one title for this lecture is that the studio is two people. It's myself and my colleague Gjertsen. And you can in one way say that we are very similar architects. We have the same core values. We have the same approach to architecture, a very hands-on approach to architecture. But you could also say that Yashar is the creative pragmatist. He deals with the things that are systematic and orderly. But he's also the throttle in the car, so he makes things run forward. And me, on the other hand, I guess I'm more of a creator in the studio, but I also have a pragmatic approach to what we create. And I think we are very lucky. In some senses, you could say that we are one architect, two people in one architect. So I'm very fortunate to have that kind of partnership with Yashar. This is our location in Trondheim. It's a tiny office, just the two of us. And we started out by doing some projects in Thailand. We've also done projects around in Sumatra and also around our city in Trondheim. We've also done quite a lot of workshops across the globe, including Uganda, Haiti, Thailand, of course, Japan. And in every single of these projects, we've met many, many people that are part of TYIN. It's part of the TYIN network. And it's in some ways the only reason why we can have a small studio and still do projects that are more considerable in size than two people could build alone. So in many ways, TYIN is it's not really two people, it's a lot of people all around the world, which is a very fortunate situation to work in for me and Yashar. I'm going to talk about three things that are important for us. Restlessness is something that is really rooted deep in us. We are constantly trying to figure out new ways to do things, and we tend to get restless quite quickly. And we want to get actively engaged in all the projects we do. And it leads to the need for methods, because if you're only restless, you could get sort of jittery and never able to develop new skills. So methods has become the core of what TYIN works with. I'll come back to that later too. And the last one is the determination, which I think you might see in the course of the project, that a lot of the projects actually has to be done by willpower alone at some point, which I think is an interesting idea, and it opens hope for more than architects, I think. So we started our studio through this project, basically. It's a student community center in our hometown, Trondheim. And it's a place where students come and they have concerts and theater and all these things. And this is a great building from 1911, and it needed to be refurbished. So this is the result of a competition we won on how to refurbish the house. And basically, we did the full cleanup and repainted and resurfaced the whole space. After about 1 year of work, and we spent about $200,000 on this project, we felt that we had used a lot of resources on a very superficial project that basically was a place for kids to get more drunk in. And in some ways, it forced us to question what is architecture for us, and what do we feel architecture could contribute to in the bigger picture. And what we really got intrigued by was the chaos underneath the surface, the way a building project is done. And also these, when you're making a beautiful lamp, sometimes you have to use soda crates to make a scaffolding and put two people on top of a board of plywood and just put small lights into it for hours. And that kind of chaos, running these workshop-like projects, really got us triggered into doing more of these hands-on projects. This was in a time where we were trying out quite a lot of different things, and we bought this boat and moved into it. So I lived in the front of the boat, and Yashar lived in the back of the boat. And it used to run as a hotel boat in a lake in Norway called TYIN. So that's also where our name comes from. After a couple of projects, we also realized that the name TYIN means to seek shelter or to go inside, which reflects in a way some of the things that we are interested in creating for human beings in the architecture. what you realize when you live in a boat in Norway is that space is, of course, it's very limited, so you have to choose carefully what you bring into your home. And the quality of each thing needs to be good so it serves its purpose. It needs to do what it's meant to do. At the same time, when you wake up and you sort of have to tear the sheet off the wall because it's frozen to the wall, and you're freezing next to trying to heat up by the oven, and slowly you wake up in parallel with the world, it sort of connects you to a different kind of life than you're used to in comfortable homes where you have air-conditioned temperatures and soft floors and straight beds. And it also made us think that maybe comfort in the typical sense, I guess the hedonistic sense, isn't necessarily the only quality of life. And we also realized that sometimes you fly around and you're an architect, and you do that day out and day in, and you get restless. And as you see in the third square, the architect explodes in this frustration that this is terrible, I can't do this anymore. And the bad part is that after a couple of days of this energy going on and internal and external explosions, you end up in square 4 and you're back to being the architect. And we realized that the reason why square 3 happened is that if you're pushed outside of your comfort zone, you tap into this energy, this restlessness, and will to do something more that's really inspiring and forces you to do new things. So we had to figure out a way to stay in square 3 as long as possible. And when you live in Norway, which is a super comfortable country in all regards, it's really hard to not be comfortable. So the only reason that's the reason why we moved from Norway. So then the story of the butterfly houses begins. For us, living on the Thai-Burmese border, not far from Mesot, that was the most extreme discomfort, physical discomfort we could feel, because the climate was extremely hot, especially if you compare it with Norwegian. And of course, for us, all the bugs and the new food, and we got some diseases maybe, and all of these impressions really was a perfect condition to stay in square 3, to be frustrated and to learn new things. At the same time, we also understood that after a while, we started to get under the skin of the community. This village is a small village called Nobo, and it's more or less all from Karen people that originally came from the Burmese side. And they lack identity papers, and they're stuck in this limbo situation where they can't get out and they can't get back. And we realized that staying there for many weeks uncovered a lot of layers we would never be able to understand as architects sitting by a desk. Also, when we started applying our ideas, for example, here, we had drawn a pathway towards one of the projects. This is a huge boulder that's lying in the way of where the path was supposed to be. And without any really big machines and things like this, 8 people had to use a full day of really hard work to move this stone. And then we started thinking, because this line on paper, it's something we created, and the stone was there in the first place. So we just had to shift our minds a bit and be less focused on getting precisely that line that we drew on paper to fit with the landscape. Maybe we have to do it the other way. Because architecture on paper is very lightweight. It's easy to make a new line. It's super hard to move a stone. And these things really hit us hard, like you felt it when the local forestry government came with guns to the meetings, and we realized that this is serious. We're responsible for people, and these guys, they don't joke around. And of course, we weren't suited for this. At this time, we had done 3 years in architect school, and we'd left Norway without sort of a really good connection to the university. We were cut off from almost everyone except a couple of professors. And we realized this is it, and all of these feelings stayed in the gut in a way. It's not something you can understand with the heart, or you feel it in the brain, or you feel it in the heart, but it sort of sticks to the gut. So that's why we call it gut feeling, these things that you can't avoid understanding anything from them. So doing design, of course, we came as Norwegians, tried to speak English, learned a little bit of Thai, and also a little bit of Korean, which is the local language. But of course, it was hard, and we tried to communicate this stairway, which was supposed to lead towards the project. And the carpenter misunderstood and did the angle was too big. So we said, no, you have to, less angle. And then he built something that was totally straight again. So we realized we couldn't communicate in a way that led to exactly the design we'd made. And then we stepped sort of 2 steps back and said, well, this stair is starting to look quite interesting. This is design. This is something we couldn't make up. It's also, we realized it's been coined a term for this by one of our professors. It's beautiful mistakes. I think that's a very big part of what we do in our architecture. And I'm very happy we embraced mistakes as part of our design method. And then, of course, you're an architect and you see the first project being sort of risen in front of your eyes, and it's just amazing how important it feels. And I don't think it's possible to translate that into books or studios in the university. It's something you have to experience with your own whole being. And then, being Norwegian, we had this idea that we should apply all this Norwegian technology to make the projects better than the local community could do. And of course, we were totally mistaken. And after a long time, we could establish a relationship where the workers were bold enough to tell us that we have skills that are adapted to this situation. So if you let us, together we can actually create something that's far more material efficient and more beautiful and locally adapted and easier to repair, because when we leave, their technology is still what applies. And then in 4 days, they clad all the buildings in this beautiful weaving technique, which was, of course, but we had to be there to realize our own arrogance in a way, or our own ignorance for that sake. So this is the first team of architects. And we built 6 sleeping units for the orphanage. One thing that was important for us was to expose the wooden construction, because that's something we do bring from Norway that's important. Because in exposing this simple bracing system, we could actually leave something behind that was more than just a structure, sort of a possibility to exchange some knowledge. So we left some, and we also took some with us. It was very positively received by the tenants. Also, when we traveled around the north, sort of the northwest of Thailand, we went around to places, and for instance, in Mesot, it was this small restaurant we always went to eat this particular dish, and on the wall it was a piece of paper, A4, tiny, and it was this woman who is a Karen lady, and she was running an orphanage in the sort of 1 hour north of the first project, in Bantasonyang. And she had about 50 kids in her care. Big Mama was her nickname. And Tasani, Big Mama, she invited us to come and help her build a new library. But we had been in the jungle in Nobo for about 5 months, all isolated from everyone, really. And we just called our friends in Trondheim and asked if people wanted to come and help us build. So we got about 12 students from Norway, and also asked our then professor Sami Rintala to come help us with the design and build. And it was a very basic approach. You make a brick structure to cover from the worst weather, the rain, and you open towards the sun and the light. I think actually that's the east side, towards the river. And it's a simple section with a double story, so you could use the upper story to keep the lower story cool in the daytime, and then you could use the upper story for sleeping in the nighttime when it was more covered and a bit more protected from the wind. And then everyone was standing in the circle, and one of the students said, "Well, we have a nice design and we have the site. Where should we start?" And Sami said, "Well, there's a hell of a lot of stone here." And by that simple act of starting to just carry stones, the starting point was what we could say as the first ball that was starting to roll down the hill. And suddenly it was a lot easier to get things done quite quickly. So in collaboration with the workers we had cooperated with in NOBU, we built this library space in about 12 days, including design. And the building cost half of one of our airfares to Thailand. So it's a very, very cheap building compared to what you get for it. And hopefully the students brought back something that they learned from this experience and add value to the whole thing. So it's the Burmese mountains in the background, and then this is the Thai side. And then a lot of different libraries has donated books to this place. Even a library in Bangkok has actually given Thai books to the orphanage. I think it's the most basic library with the most languages represented in the world. I think it's close to 10 languages in this tiny library. It's kind of amazing. At the same time, me and Yashar, again, we got restless. We didn't really have enough to do because the students did all the hard work. And Tasani also needed a new bathhouse. So that's why we started on the second structure you see in the background. And it was an existing structure. The dark brown ironwood frame was already there, left by a former NGO, and we started building on this structure. So we had sort of a competition between the local workers and the Norwegian students who could do the building quickest. And of course, applying Western standard for toilets in the jungle on the border doesn't really fit with the situation you're trying to deal with. And they get quite dirty and unsanitary. And we tried to approach it in a way that was more, the materials were sourced nearby, so it's easy to replace it. And also in a way that it's so simple that it can't break in a way. And if it breaks, you change it. I've heard that they've changed the floor to concrete in the end because the gravel was basically, we had an idea it could just drain away the water, but it didn't do it well enough, so it got too moist. So that's also something that's nice. You can easily take it out and change it according to your needs. So this is the bathhouse. And these are urinals for different size kids. So they grow up and still have a service. A very basic design, some cores of concrete stone and then this wooden construction over. And one thing that struck us was that we spent about 2 weeks on this project, both of these together. And after 2 weeks of hard work, of course, our building was there and it was in use. So the lines on the paper had real consequences for people. And it was positive consequences. It was usable. And this is also, as we say, architecture for necessity. This is a necessary building. And it was made in 14 days. So you can do a lot with the right attitude, I think. So after this, we'd stayed, as I said, in the jungle for now about 6 months, and we got some signals from both professors and the situation we were working in that Bangkok sort of called us to approach this urban situation. So we packed up the studio on the back of our pickup truck and just drove to Bangkok, like this. And I learned my only Thai sentence, "Pas Thai nik noi kap." And it brought me into all sorts of trouble, because then everyone thought I could speak Thai. And I don't, I'm sorry. And here we got in touch with Case Studio Architects, and Pia Ploy, hello, she's here on the front seat. And Case Studio Architects had been working in this community for about 2 years before we came here in 2008. This is in Minburi, and suddenly we realized that all the things we'd learned in the jungle about how to approach the architecture didn't apply anymore, because without the social sensitivity and a foot inside of the social networks, you basically couldn't do anything. So Ploy taught us a whole set of new tools that we had to use, and we really realized that our methods got outdated really quickly. So we needed to change all the time, and that was what really intrigued us. It's not about what you do, it's how you do it, and how you change how you do it according to the situation you're in. Also, we hung posters inviting the kids to watch a movie and then discuss